why do you do what you do? Because if your why is not bigger than your problems, you will fail 100%. And so when something big comes and you're like, oh man, I was in it for the money. Like, I'll tell you what, there's been some nights where I'm like, this ain't worth the money.
Right.
Let me just say, mental health, you cannot put a price tag on. Right. So if you're doing something for the money and it's like wearing you out and it's affecting your life, your relationships, like stop.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Camp. This one is unique. We are live streaming this with Eric McNeil. Eric, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me, man.
Eric, you're an interesting dude, man. I actually knew you before I ever really knew you because I listened to one of your podcasts with Brad Lee, and it was like a very captivating story, which we'll get into in a minute, but I appreciate you being on here. Eric, you are an investment and business growth strategist, and we're going to kind of get into that, but I'm really interested to see how you began. I've heard your story, but there's a lot of people that haven't, and I want to get it out there because it's a very interesting and a very captivating story. So, kind of get in as far back as you want to go of how you kind of got in this life of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, totally, man. So yeah, I can share a little bit of the background on what got me into the entrepreneurship world, and then how you mentioned some of the story that happened, like on Brad Lee's podcast between my wife and I,
right,
and our children. But yeah, as early as I can remember, I've always had the drive to be an entrepreneur. It's funny. My mom reminds me of stories that like when we were coming off the freeway exit and there's a big long line, she's complaining about how long the line is. And I'm like, man, this would be a great spot for a lemonade stand. Like people are just parked, like it's easy to sell them. Right.
Right.
And, another time when, I was a little kid and, a buddy of mine, we really wanted these really cool toys from McDonald's. And so we had to we already got our Happy Meal. We wanted to get another one, but we didn't have the money. Mom didn't want to buy us another meal just for the toy. And so we found out that if you got on the McDonald's slides with a tray, you can go way faster. And so we're like, okay, we start going down it and kids want to go. We're like, for $0.25, you can go down the slide on our trays. And so that got shut down pretty quick, but we were able to make a couple of bucks, got our little toy. And so like, that was like the first feeling of like coming up with an idea, solving a problem or making something better, charging for it, and then getting like a cool little reward at the end, right? Like our goal, like it's just funny. Like when everyone just hopped on here, we were just talking about like $1 billion dreams,
right? But
it all started with like a $2 toy. You know what I mean? Like you start small and you create those goals, right?
Right. And you solve the need too. I mean,
exactly.
Kids wanted to go fast. Hey, here's how to go fast.
Here's exactly how you do it, right? And so, and I think that's how you get paid, right? You get paid. I think Elon Musk talks about it in direct proportion to the problems you solve.
Right, for sure.
And so I've always had that background. And then, I've worked in wealth management for like the last 10 years, worked through the banking channels. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago where I finally went independent. And so where everything got started for my wife and I was, so we've been married for 9 years now.
Congrats.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Going strong. And, we tried getting pregnant probably 6 to 8 months after. We want to enjoy a little bit of time. We're like, okay, let's, try this thing, grow the family.
Right.
And we realized that, stuff wasn't happening right away. And we're like, oh, like people actually struggle with this. This is like a new concept to us,
sure.
right?
Yeah. Cause I mean, growing up, you're always like, oh, he, did this and got her pregnant. He did that and got her pregnant. You don't realize like how hard it actually is and like how perfect it's got to be to get that.
Every single child's a miracle. And then for the children to be born healthy and the mom to be healthy, like all that is just a miracle that we take for granted every single day.
For sure.
It's crazy.
100% agree.
Right. And so, and then we started realizing this. And so we decided to go through like the fertility specialist. And so we went and we did, an IUI and it worked the first time. So right when it worked, we found out that we were pregnant. And then shortly after that, found out we were going to have twins. So we were super excited. And then we found out we were going to have 2 girls. And so that was going to be super fun, right? To be a girl dad. And we were about 6 months pregnant. 6 months pregnant. And we decided to go to Mexico for like a little baby moon, just like a last little hoorah. We're in Rocky Point, and
because you lived in Arizona at the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay. So it was only like a 4 or 5 hour drive tops.
Yeah, and I mean you're thinking it's nothing.
I know, right? Yeah, because we're at like 23 weeks pregnant, so we're like, okay, we're going into the last trimester, so like we should be fine. Let's go on a quick little weekend getaway, and then bed rest really until the last little bit.
For sure, especially with twins.
Exactly right, and so. Like I said, so they like on our second to last day, we're getting ready to come home. Everyone's getting packed up and whatnot. And then my wife wakes me up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and she's like pacing back and forth. And I'm like, what's going on? And at first she's having like really strong pain. So she's like, did we eat something bad? Like, what's going on? I feel sick, but this isn't normal. This isn't just like a stomach ache. This is like really bad. And she was having contractions.
Wow.
In Mexico at 23 weeks. And then she wakes me up and she's like, my water broke. And dude, I just remembered like, oh man, like that feeling, like I'll never forget that.
I couldn't
like,
even
it's
imagine.
just like, just waking up and just the utter like, oh my gosh, like did this seriously, like, is this happening? And so like I run over, and again, it's like 4 or 5 in the morning. So I run over and wake up my cousins. Cause we had like, there's probably like 15 people sleeping in this, like we just bought like a nice little Airbnb or whatever.
Right.
Wake them up, and I'm like, hey, can you go talk to my wife? Cause like she's already had like 2 or 3 kids. I was like, can we just like go verify like what this is? And she comes out, she's like, yeah, her water broke. We need to get her to the hospital. I'm like, we're in Rocky Point. Like, how are we going to pull this off? And so we're looking stuff up, and there's like an urgent care a couple miles down the road. And I'm like, well, that's like, we just need somebody at this point. There's no hospital nearby. So we go to this urgent care, and we get a doctor to start kind of assessing Kelly. And next to us, this kid's like crying because he got like beach water in his eye. And he's at the urgent care to get sand out of his eye. And we're like about to give birth to 2 babies.
Right.
And it's just like, I just feel so bad. Like I'll just have like the most fond like memory of the workers being there, of just like being able to do something. Right. Like imagine that, like, man, I'd rather be in this stall with this kid, like fleshing out his eye versus like this family. Right. Like it's just such a night and day thing. Let me just make sure everyone's muted. Shoot, sorry. When everyone hops on, can we just make sure we're muted, please? Thanks. And so being able to just take action, and like they had like baby monitor, or not, sorry, like an ultrasound machine, but it was probably from like the 80s.
Wow.
Like super, super old. They had to like dust it off. And like, it was just, the whole experience was really tough. Just like gathering those emotions and like feeling kind of helpless. And then once we found out that like they could ballpark how long she would have before we delivered, that's when we're like, okay, we called like the city, right? Let's see, the city of Ajo, and then Gila Bend, and then Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And so we had to get picked up in 2 different ambulances to get to the border. Once we got to the border, a helicopter comes down, takes Kelly. I can't go with her.
Wow.
And then so I have to drive from Gila Bend to Phoenix.
That's a long drive.
Bro, it was like 2 hours roughly. And it was just like, yeah, we want to speed to hurry up and get there, but like if we get pulled over, it's like going to slow us down even more. So it's like you're just trying to hurry, but there's like nothing you can do. And I was just like,
that's a helpless drive. I mean, that's
and like
tough.
And I couldn't like check in with my wife, like no phones or anything.
Right.
She's just like, because they had to like strap her in, right?
Right.
And so I'm just like, dude, like, is my wife okay? Is she about to like give birth like in a helicopter?
Right.
Like what's going on? And so we finally get to the hospital close to the same time. And like she started like calm down. We realized that we had a little bit of time once we were there. And she'll probably have to correct me later, but I think is like the whole thing was just a blur. And I believe like within 12 hours of us being there is when we delivered our first baby. And when the doctors were asking me, it's like, hey, how far along is your wife? I was like 23, 24 weeks. Like I need an exact date, because from 23 to 24, like the chances of survival at a 23 week is like 20%. And then 24 weeks is like 60 to 80%.
Wow.
So like one week is like so much development, like just organs and stuff.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. We found out I was 23, and they're like, okay, we have to like urgently move. And so the first daughter, our first daughter was born. And then Kelly starts to get wheeled back into our room because our second baby was still like in his sack. And we go back to the room, and literally we're there like a couple of minutes. And I just remember it was so crazy because like Kelly was a little bit out of it, and she was like, she starts crying. She's like, I don't want our daughters to have different birthdays. Because it was like kind of like our one daughter's going to be here. We can give her the medical attention, and then we wait like another 3 months, and then our other daughter's born. Right. And she's like, I don't want them to be born separate. And I was like, well, like it's like, if we can help it, we should wait. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And like instantly her water broke for the second baby. And we're like, holy cow. Okay. And so now, and then we go and deliver our second baby. And then, so then we're in the hospital for a week. And, you know, long story short, you know, after 4 days, our first daughter passes away. And then 3 days later, our second daughter passes away.
Wow.
And to obviously, you know, spare everyone the details, right? But everything that I was able to gather from that was unity.
Right.
Being able to get through something like that. I just remember looking at my wife and I was just like, I hope this is the hardest thing we go through, but for us to be in our young 20s, like I just feel that we're going to have a lot of challenges thrown our way.
Right.
And this is going to be one of those things that like we can reflect on. Like, how did we get through probably the hardest trial that anybody could ever go through? And how can we apply that to future trials?
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's a small scale like business or if it's like in life. It doesn't matter. Like, this could be applicable to everything. And it all came down to like our unity. Like, if we have each other's backs, we're solid. And the biggest lesson I got from my daughters was everybody dies, but not everybody lives.
Right.
And so I think that's where that fire of urgency came for me was, okay, that's when, and it was right after that is when I went independent finally.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I need to stop making excuses. Like, I'm here to live and I'm not here to just be alive.
Right.
But yeah, man, that was like,
dude, that's an incredible story. And I'm so sorry to hear that from, you know, that's I cannot imagine losing a kid, man. It makes me about want to get emotional, but I'm divorced. Most people know that. And like, I only get my daughter every other weekend and, you know, one day a week, and it sucks just being, you know, having that situation. And I could not imagine, you know, living without her. So sorry to hear that. But, you. You know, that's it. It really is an incredible story of, you know, like a triumphal, like there's a lot of lessons learned, which I think it's really hard to say that, I guess, because a lot of trauma happened to learn those lessons.
yeah,
But if you can kind of, you know, move through it and use it and still like it's hard to even celebrate it, but you had, you know, 3 days and 7 days, I guess, with them. You know, those are precious days, and you know, I can, geez, like I can't even imagine. So, you know, one thing I was going to ask is, you know, so a lot of people go through a lot of things. What do you think that, like, how were you able to overcome that? Like, were you already in self-development and mindset? Like, what was telling you what you just said, you know, a minute ago, how we can use this as, you know, a reason to get through it, and we can kind of use it for fuel, if you will. How were you able to even come up with that? Because most people would just sit there and pity, and I mean, and they have all the right to do that, right? Yeah, because that is a traumatic thing to go through. Yeah. But you can almost take two people that go through the exact same thing, and one uses it for a reason why they have to be successful, and one uses it for a reason why they can't be successful. Right. Same situation. Like, you know, it's crazy to think about, but there's, you know, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that has been in the same situation you just described. Mm-hmm. And I'd be interested to see like how they are, you know, one might live in, you know, my life sucks and this happened, and this is why I can't do it, and I can't do this and can't do that. And one might live in, look, I'm going to like let their legacy, even though it was 3 days and 7 days, live on, and I'm going to do this because I choose to. So, you know, I'm interested to see or hear, you know, from your point of view, how you were able to get kind of like the right, in a level mindset, right? Like, and that's a difficult situation to be in.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. From childhood, I've always been pretty optimistic. And it's funny, there's this like one lesson that I even try to help and like teach my sister, like when she was in high school. I remember she was like complaining to my mom about something, and I just heard them going back and forth, not like them two fighting, but like something going on like at school. Right. And like, I just grabbed a gallon of milk and I just started pouring it on the ground, and they like both stopped talking, and, like looked at me, and I was like, what do we do? And they're like, what are you talking about? Why'd you do that? I'm like, all we can do is clean it up. Like, just get to work. Right. Like stop crying over spilled milk. Right. And it was just so funny because it's like such a powerful object lesson that like I continue to do that. Right. And like, I can't, and I want to speak like respectfully of the whole situation. Of course, it's not just spilled milk. Like, you know, we lost children. Right. But what can you do? Right. Like, I think like I've had a lot of life experiences that have helped me like learn you can only control what you can control.
Amen to that.
That's it. Right. Like and I tell my wife all the time, not regarding this, but other things, like if it bothers you, change the situation or change the way you feel about it. Like,
right.
No,
because there's really nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do. Right.
Right.
And that's what, like, somebody told me that like a long, long time ago. Like if something's bothering you, ask yourself one question and that's it. Can you do anything about it?
Right.
If you can, do it. If you can't, then forget about it.
I love that.
Like plain and simple.
Right.
That's it. Right. And so I think when it all came down, and that's what this is, like you guys see the tattoo.
Right? I saw you just got that, right?
Yeah. So we just got our tattoo. The girls just would be 5 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so this is actually the flower that we put on their headstone.
Okay.
And so that way it's just like a way that we can like physically keep them with us forever.
Right.
And it's just little reminders, man. Like, I'm not going to say that I'm perfect by any means, right? Not even close, but like just being able to work hard and like control what I can control.
Right.
And just, that's helped me a lot. Right. And so that's where I think is like at the end of the day, we have like an eternal perspective on the things. And so whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. If I feel like I have a chance to like meet my daughters and see them again,
right.
do I want to be able to look back and be like, this is the life I led? Or this is the life I led.
Like,
what story do I want to tell?
Like, look what I did.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure, they're cheering you on saying, hey, like, look at the life, we could have had, but I mean, they're living, a great life. But, that's a really good perspective to look at. And I love what you said, because control what you can control. And, I'm always like, don't worry about what you can't. Like, people always come up to me, they're like, oh, like, how do you feel that you can't see your daughter every day? And I'm like, well, if I thought about it every day, I'd be sitting here depressed and in a dark room. And, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yep.
Now, my ex-wife and I have a fantastic relationship and we hang out a lot, actually. We're always at Lagoon and we're always doing something together. But I don't look at things like if I can't control it, and if it is what it is, then you just got to be positive about it. And look, now some people could argue that I don't care. People tell me that, well, you don't care. Well, I do care, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, I wake up every day, just be like, oh, it's another day that I don't have my daughter.
Yeah.
My life sucks. No, people are depending on me and I have to show up and be productive for them. And I care about my daughter a ton. I'm always, if I get 20 minutes, I'll text my ex-wife or her husband or their baby, say, hey, can I FaceTime her real quick and say what's up?
Yeah.
I work it in there, but at the end of the day, I can't control it, right? It's out of my control. And, legally, my ex-wife doesn't have to do anything for me. So,
right.
I really like that, because there's so many people out there that just dwell on things that they really don't have an opinion, like they can't control anything. And I really like what you said is if you can't control it, then if you look at it and see if you can change it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different perspective that I haven't really thought about it before, because look, change it.
Yep.
Well, I can't change it. Then stop worrying about it.
Exactly.
Or be like, oh yeah, okay, well.
And just move on.
Yeah, like, oh, like, I get people a lot with complaining about cars and stuff. But well, then change it.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Well, I can't. Okay, then stop complaining about it, because it is what it is. So, how has that helped you in business, when you can control what you can control and you can't, and moving fast? Because in business, now that you're moving, you're doing your own thing, you went independent, you have to move like quickly in business. And you can, I'm sure a lot of crazy things has happened, unfortunate things happen. You lost money, made money, and you can always almost look at that like when you've lost money, well, you can sit there and dwell on it, or you can sit there and choose to think about making more money.
Right.
And I always tell people, look, I wake up every single day of how to make $100, not save $100.
Yes.
Because I'm in the mindset of making things happen. I'm not sitting here thinking, how can I control everything and just keep this tight little box around everything. Mm-hmm. So how has that been able to help you through your entrepreneurial journey of having that mindset of just pushing through things?
Massively. So when I do coaching, right? So I do a lot of like mentorships for business owners. And the first like fundamental thing is like, so who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it? And the most important was the third question. I just want to find out kind of who you are and how you introduce yourself, but why do you do what you do? Because if your why is not bigger than your problems, you will fail 100%.
100% agree.
And so when something big comes and you're like, oh man, I was in it for the money. Like, cause I'll tell you what, there's been some nights where I'm like, this ain't worth the money.
Right.
It doesn't matter how
much. Which
much
shows the money.
Yeah.
Like, money's not everything.
This ain't worth it, bro.
Right.
Like mental health, let me just say mental health, you cannot put a price tag on. Right. So if you're doing something for the money and it's like wearing you out and it's affecting your life, your relationships, like stop.
Right.
Like you need to just go find something that can like pay the bills and just be happy.
Right.
Like I would be paying the bills and happy than like going through everything. If like, obviously I have a bigger reason, but like if my only motivation was money, like dude, I would have burned out so long ago. Right. So that's the biggest one is why are you doing what you're doing? And your why has to be bigger than your problem.
For
Plain and
sure.
simple.
For sure. No, it's so crazy when people get hung up on so little things. Cause I'm like, that's not like we always say, you know, you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies.
Right.
Like you're like, the goal is so much bigger. Like in our company, like $100 million is a lot bigger than $1. Like, why are we sitting here, you know, complaining about $5 this person did when our goal is, okay, who cares about the $5? Or hey, this person, you know, bought the office. You know, I get complaints. Oh, we bought Starbucks for the day. Oh, cool, it's $30. Just tell them, trying not to do it again. It's $30. We're moving on. Just move on. Like, just creating, getting the mode of creating. So I totally relate to that. That your dream has to be bigger than obstacles. How are you able to keep that dream out there in front of you all the time, even when you get discouraged and down? You know, how are you able to keep pushing through and to keep yourself, you know, people call it motivated. Some people, I don't believe in motivation, whatever your perspective is. I'm interested to hear about that.
Yeah. It's funny. So my assistant and I were talking about this on the drive over here, and it's like, people do ask me all the time, like, bro, how are you so like motivated? That's crazy. Like, I get you have like your story with your kids. Does that motivate you? I'm like, a tiny bit. But I'm not motivated anymore. Like I wake up disciplined. Like I know that there's something that has to be done. And so I do it. So like I've studied like a lot of like Kobe Bryant's mind, like that Mamba mentality. Like I just study people's minds who are where I want to go. And I pay people to get into rooms to get me to where I want to go faster.
Right.
And so once you're surrounded by those people, like you and I, like we know each other like decently, not even super well, but I know for a fact that like if one of us started slacking, we'd be able to like call each other on it. Like, dude, if you want to be in like my circle, like we don't have time for like the self-pity and like I got stuff to do. Like, you know what I mean?
We're moving on.
And so like we just carry each other. So I think a really big piece of that is like your crowd. So I've also, again, like whenever I mentor people, I'm like, you can have your friends, and that's really good to have like a couple of good friends, right? That like, for me, any friend can call me 2 a.m. I'll wake up, I'll go help them. It doesn't matter. But that doesn't mean they get all of my time. Like my circle is where I spend all my time and energy, because energy is a currency. And if I'm investing my time and energy into the circle, I'm going to get it back. Whereas, you know, I have good friends who are in different places of life, and that's fine. Like everyone has their own like road. And I'm here to love and support you. Like you're still my boy, or you're like a good friend, or you're female, doesn't matter. You're all my friends, but my circle are like the people that I spend my time with because I've got places to go.
Does your circle ever change?
Ooh, that's a good question. I've never been asked that. I have a pretty solid core, and I think there's probably like 4 people that like will probably never change. And then from time to time, it'll like slowly evolve. But for the most part, it stays pretty much the same, dude. Like,
no, I think that's important, because I'm a believer of people who invest in me. I invest in them. Right. I'm very similar to you. Like it's like I'm talking to myself. We're talking the same, but like I'll always be there for an acquaintance that I haven't seen in a couple of years, but man, they need me. They got a flat tire. Okay, I'll come help you, because that's just me. But for me to go extra or like do things or whatever, I'm like, I'm gonna invest in you if you invest in me. There are some people, family members of mine, that don't invest in me, and they expect me to always invest in them, always to be there for them and do things for them and give them things, give them money, all these things. And I'm like, why? Because relationships are not a 50-50. It's 100 and 100. Like, I need 100% from you, and you're going to get 100% from me. And that's been tough. How have you had to like weed people out, or ever had a hard conversation with someone of like, hey, like, kind of like the, what is it? The Meet the Parents. Here's the circle.
Yeah.
And you're out here. This is what you just exited the circle.
Dude, it's hard, but it's when you do it with love, and if you're like, you don't have to be demeaning to that person. Like, ever, right? It's just like, hey, look, we got to sit down, man. Like, here's what's going on. Like, I'm here. I love you. But like, here's what we're both giving, right? Here's the energy that we're both giving. And it's not fair or respectful to myself to keep doing this.
Right.
Like, I'm here when you need me, always. But for like my day to day, like I have to provide for my family. I have to provide for this. Like I'm trying to enact change in the world. So this is where my time and energy is going. If you can get on board, fantastic. If you cannot, like, this is where we draw the line.
Right. So you actually sit down and have those hard conversations with people?
Dude, there was 2 that I had. When was it? It was right. Oh yeah, it was right before. So it was right after high school. I was like 18 years old, and I ended up moving to Utah for like 3 months because I ended up serving a mission for my church.
Right.
And so I was gone for a couple of months where I just had to like get away from some people. And I heard a conversation, I heard like this. I think it was like a podcast or something, and they're talking about anybody who you've like regressed with, if they were involved, cut them out. And I was like, dude, this is like my best friend, like in high school.
Right.
2 of them, 2 like really close people. And I had to tell them like, hey, I love you, but like, I've got to move on. And it was like, dude, it was probably one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have. And I look back to where they're both at right now to where I'm at, not to say that I'm ahead or anything like that, but like, I would not be happy if I was in their situation.
Right.
They might be happy in their situation, but knowing where I like my potential is at, and if I stayed there, like I would be pretty miserable. Dude,
that's awesome, because you could almost look back in time and say that was kind of a defining moment, because I talk a lot about defining moments on this podcast, because I feel like in a lot of situations you can almost nail it down to like one conversation of why you're where you're at, almost like hey,
it starts the trajectory.
It's just a stepping stone, right? Like someone laid that stepping stone and you stepped on it and you took that first step. And that kind of put you on a path to where you're on now. I can think of it. I mean, I grew up in entrepreneurship, but I can think of many times where I was, okay, this is the decision that I'm going. And you can almost say, hey, and I don't know if you ever looked at it like this, like, hey, that one podcast or audio, whatever you listen to, kind of changed the trajectory of my entire life, because those 2 people could have taken me to some place I shouldn't have been.
Totally agree.
And we all have those friends and we all have those acquaintances in high school. And that's why now I'm kind of like not easy to drop people, but I'm moving on, and I'm moving so fast. It's kind of hard for people to catch up and whatever. And I have like 2 or 3 friends that are like in my circle that I could count on until I die. But yeah, I've had to have those conversations that are like, hey man, like let's do this. Why?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I want to go to Vegas with you. Why? Because you're going to ride on my plane and we're going to go have a good time in Vegas.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in forever. Why?
Yeah.
Like, just because I knew you then doesn't mean I really owe you anything now. And I don't really mean that to be rude, but like, what have you invested in me? And I don't have to, like you said, you don't have to be a jerk about it and like try to like screw you and screw off. I mean, man, like this just like my circle, man. Like, everybody's got to eat. I want everybody at the table. At the end of the day, it's up to you what you do.
Kevin O'Leary talked about that, because that was one thing that I struggled with, because I wanted to be the nice guy. Like, we were friends before things took off, and now that it took off, like, we might have separated, but like I still remember like the fondness,
right?
And I was struggling with that, like the exact same thing. And Kevin O'Leary talked about it, and he was like, everyone gets one chance to ask me like for money or hanging out or like an opportunity, and I tell them like, it's like, hey, let's go do this. I'm like, okay, this is your one time, and like don't ever ask me again. But like, let's go have a good time.
Right.
And they just sets the standard, like right there is like, this isn't like something you pay me back. This isn't a loan. This isn't this. It's like, here's what you need. We're still friends. If you ask again, like we can't be friends.
Right.
And so it's like, I know it's tough, but like, you just have to be forthright. And like, you're not being a jerk. It's like, I'm here to help you. Is this what you really need? Cool. I'll help you out this once. But like, I got to where I'm at without the handouts.
Right.
And I know you can. And if I help you, then it's going to cripple you. Because like that's what, like, there's a reason like mama birds push the baby birds out of the nest.
Right.
Like,
go fly.
You can't fly. Like the mama bird cannot carry you to fly.
Right.
You have to learn how to flap. You might fall down. You might get hurt. You might scrape your knee. But guess what? Do you hate your situation? Right. Fix it, or fix the way you feel about it.
Right.
Learn how to fly. And so I think if we're constantly helping people out, like, I'm always here to help, right? In a different term. But like, if you're always there to like catch them and be a crutch, like they'll never grow.
It's an enabler.
Yes. It stunts their growth, man. Like they can't hit their potential if you're a crutch.
Right. Right. And I'm a giver. I give way too much money away. It's bad. And my wife doesn't agree with it. And I'm just like, oh, you need something? Here you go. I've slowed it down a little bit, but we've created a foundation. Now we have the Haugen Family Foundation, which we give back to veterans, single parents, and kids. And so we focus a lot of our efforts doing that with all of the dealerships and all the different companies, feeding it and being able to do cool things. But yeah, like I used to be like, oh, you need that, here you go. Oh, you need that, here you go. And I talking about culture and team building. So what we started to do in our company, because you always have those people that are like, hey, I need help, or hey, and then you're always like, boom, you do it for them. Well, what are you teaching them?
Yeah,
Nothing.
exactly.
You're just training them to just go ask you for help because they're not going to have to do their job. And so we have a rating system which we rate them in their job descriptions, KRAs, and then also the culture. And our goal is to get them all to L5 is what we call it. And then also culture L5. And if they're L1s, super focus management, and then all the way, it's a graduation, and then L5 is pretty much, hey, once a month, how you doing? Or once a week, how's it going? So whenever you want to shoot them a text or an email and ask them how things are going. And that has been so much better because naturally I'm like that. Yeah. You have a title, I trust you. Like, it's just, it's not the greatest. So sometimes it's kind of bitten me, but I don't like to be micromanaged. So I like to just, hey, if you're going to be our person, let's roll. And I trust you. And, I always, at the beginning of this podcast, I said, business is not a pyramid, it's a round table, because I 100% agree to that, because everybody's got a seat at the table and everybody has a say in what we do, because I trust you. And so, but there are some people on our team that if they're a manager and then someone asks them to do something, they just do it for them, and it just drives me nuts. Yeah. So we've been doing this cultural thing and training and a lot, and it's actually made us so much better because you're trying to duplicate your efforts, right? I mean, with 8 locations, 200 employees, there's no way that I can be everywhere at once, or anybody can be everywhere at once. So I think that's really important in business, that you don't enable people in your team, right?
Yep.
And especially when you're starting, it's a little bit more difficult when you're starting a business, because you might wear many hats. You're the accountant. You're the, if you're on an ice cream shop, well, you're probably scooping the ice cream, you're doing all the books, you're doing everything. And you slowly have to release those duties as you get bigger. That's really hard for people to scale.
I was going to say, that might be the hardest part that no one tells you about.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've gotten this in a lot of your growth strategies. So let's get into that. Like, you do an investment and business growth strategy. What are some things that so if you're sitting down with me and I'm like, hey, I have 3 employees and I'm struggling, what are some tips that your go-to tips to help people do that?
Yeah. So when we go through, like, especially if you already built something out, right? Like, we'll kind of go over some of the fundamentals. Cause like, it's so funny. I don't know if you're a fan of The Office, but like where Kevin walks in and Plop is like making the stack of cards. He's like, no, you want to go bigger this way. He's like, no, you need like a foundation. Right. And it's the same thing in business. Like, if you have like the right foundation, then you can start to scale. And then once you get into that, like, the hardest part is like relinquishing some of the power. Right. And like how you said, there's like a fine line of like telling them what to do and like basically doing it for them and just having them do it, or like being able to delegate. Like, hey, this is your responsibility. I need to trust you to do this.
Right. And being a true coach instead of hey, I need you. Like, there's a difference between coaching, help. Like, there's a lot of, ways we can dice this, but like showing them and like walking alongside them and doing it with them, I think is way better than just barking at them what to do. And you have to know my personality is I tend to just tell you to do something. I expect you know how to do it. And I've had to do a lot of self looking at my, in the mirror and saying, okay, my own brother called me out. I almost fired him over it because I told him to do something. He's like, dude, I really don't know how to do this. And Jason hasn't showed me what to do. And then, a couple months goes by, I'm like, dude, you're terrible at this. Like, I literally told him, my own brother, I said, you have 30 days to get this done or else I'm letting you go by December 31st. And he's like, are you kidding me? And he's like, no. He's like, I don't even know what to do. You've never told me. And I'm like, well, your title says what you're supposed to do. He's like, dude. So I'm like, okay, I had to check myself, got him linked up with the right people. And now he's probably one of the top people in the country at what he does. Dang. And so I looked at myself, I'm like, man, like, am I just telling people to do stuff and not really showing? So I always tell people, okay, I'm telling you this. Do you know how to do it? Yep. No, I don't know how to do it. Okay, I'm going to link you up with people. I'm going to show you how to do it. And do you think you can do this? I always ask him. Yeah, I think I can do it. Okay, I'll check with you in a week. I never checked on my brother because that's just not my personality. So I had to definitely learn myself. So I'm sure there's people out there that, do that a lot. When you're working with people that are trying to scale and grow, I'm sure that you're running that all the time.
Yeah, and it's so funny because you think of like, if I have to sit here and coach you, I could just do it myself. That is probably like the number one, like, crippling mindset of an entrepreneur. Right. Like, if you got to do 70 hours this week, so be it. like you got to coach the team because you have to be able to like replicate yourself, even if it's at a 70% capacity.
Right.
So if you have 3 people working on one project and all of them are like 60 to 70% of how you could do it, that's still better than what you could do it.
Right.
Because they just surpassed you, right?
You can look at football.
Oh yeah.
Coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
He needs 53 people to win the game.
Yep.
I mean, whether all 53 people get in or not, I don't know. But, that's up to him. But he needs 3 in football. You need it's 53, right? 53 man roster. You need 53 people to win the game. Mm-hmm. If I looked at my business, like if I just, like some people you run into all the time. If you look at your business, like, if I need to tell you how to do it, I'll just do it myself. Do you think Sataki from BYU's out there throwing the football? No. You think Whittingham from U of U is out there throwing the football? No. They're a coach, right? They're the head. I know they're not the CEO, but you can look at them like they're the head of the team, and they're just coaching people to accomplish the goal, right? Yep. And the goal is, hopefully, probably not a national championship this year, but some sort of bowl game or divisional championship. But because I hear that people all the time. Well, if I need to tell people how to do it, why don't I just do it? I don't know. Do you think?
Yeah, you'll never scale. You'll never hit your goals.
Is Urban Meyer out there or? I'm losing my train of thought with the dude from Alabama. What's his name?
Oh, Saban.
Yeah, Saban. I'm like, I can see his face. Is Saban out there in any championship? Has he ever thrown a football?
Right.
No.
Just helps his team.
He coaches, right? He's a true coach. And I love sports, so I look at business like everything is sports. And even sometimes a little cutthroat, like, hey, if we're not accomplishing the goal and we're winning, what do sports teams usually do? Boom, cut.
Yep.
Like they make a change. Yep. Nebraska fired their coach after 2 games.
Yep.
I mean, they made a quick change. Now some say it was a little too quick, but you got to make that call.
Yep.
So
I agree, man. And that's so funny. At one of my last masterminds, one of my LSU, he plays ball up there. He asked a question at the end. He was like, do you find it easier or harder for athletes to transition into business than anyone else? It's like, bro, you guys have, especially as like a D1 and an SEC athlete at that, like you have a leg up on just about everybody.
Right.
Because business comes down to discipline. Like at the end of the day, like, because if you're not like a great business mind, there's hundreds of people around you that are. Partner with them. And if you're disciplined to get the job done, you'll figure it out.
Right.
And nobody knows discipline like an SEC player.
Oh, yeah. Especially LSU, right?
Right. You know what I'm saying? And so, I treat the same thing like with sports, how you said, right? And like if you need and how you said, there's a 53-man roster, but game day is 11 on 11.
Right.
So like 20% of your athletes are actually playing like at any given time,
right? But
you still have to coach the whole team, right? But when you coach the whole team, you have practice squad guys, and your practice squad guys are making your game day players even better,
right?
So if you're investing the time in building out an entire like sales community, like your whole force, they start to help each other, and then you start to grow, right? And so even with my group, I have Elite Mafia. Anybody can come sell with me, and then they help each other out. They go and network with one another, right? And like this is like the group that's on the call today, like. I'm helping them, but we're also in a big group chat, right? Like on Discord. And so they can go network with one another,
right? And
then they can go create their own opportunities, right? And so like we just make each other better because I'm able to coach everybody as a whole to then work together.
Right. And it's cool. And I 100% agree with you about sports because it shows you teamwork. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything can ever happen by yourself.
No.
I don't look like it, but I used to do bodybuilding competitions, physique. Never was huge. But everybody's, you're by yourself. No, I have a nutritionist. I have a coach doing all my workouts. I have people doing my meal plan. Like I have to, it's a team effort, like quote unquote team. I don't know how you can get through life by yourself. I mean, that is kind of just miserable, right? I mean, back when I was younger, I was, making good money and I was doing it kind of by myself. I was kind of bored. I'm like, well, no one wants to do this by myself. I'm like, I go on a cruise and I'm cheersing myself with like this sucks. So but I grew up in sports, so I'm really used to that team, everybody's being a team, and you rely on people to do things better than you, because if I'm a lineman, obviously I'm not throwing the ball or running the ball, if that matter,
right? But
I'm doing my job and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be. And they also realize that everybody's not a quarterback, right?
Yep.
You have, I don't even know how many NFL teams are, 30 or 32. Mm-hmm. So there's 32 and pretty much 32. We'll say 25 good quarterbacks. I don't know what team out there.
Yeah.
But there's only a select few out of there's maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks per team, or maybe 3 quarterbacks per team of 53 man. But they're not all on the 53 man roster, right? Everybody needs to know that they might not be a quarterback, but I believe this probably guy from LSU is probably like, hey, I might not be the quarterback, but I can go find the quarterback. Yep. Because the owner and the concepteur guy does not need to be the quarterback. Just go find one.
Yep.
I'm kind of the quarterback. That's my personality. But I know a lot of people that own businesses that are like, I'm not really the quarterback. I'm behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And usually that's more of like your operations guy, president, whatever you want to call it. That's more behind. The CEO is kind of the more forthcoming. Mm-hmm. And they just go, quarterback it and make it work. You just kind of sit. You're more of the, the president of the company sits in the office. But there's nothing bad about that.
Right.
But it takes a person to realize that. Because people can get in their business and they're like, hey, I'm struggling. We'll go find the people that can make it happen.
I think that's the biggest part, right, that you just touched on is like, it doesn't matter. Like, don't have the pride to just do it by yourself. Have the pride of winning.
Right.
And so if that means having to hire people out and bringing in partners, do it because you'll win. Like, what's the point of losing if you do it by yourself?
Right. It's so key because, and I say you win as a team, you lose as a team.
Yep.
But you really need to have to go get the people to get in there to make it happen. I mean, like growing up, you had those people that had to take every last shot and have to make it all about them. Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience, every single one of those people that were all about them and had to take every shot and do everything about them right now are not that successful.
Right.
At least in my experience growing up, there's some people out there that I knew that had to do everything and do it because everything had to be about them. Well, life hits you so hard when you grow up that you really have to put things on other people. And especially when you're coaching, like me, when I have an idea and you talk about credibility, when I have an idea and I want, say, our salespeople to do it, I call our COO, our operations guy, chief operations, and then I tell him what I want him to do, and then he calls the managers, and the managers make it seem like it's their idea.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Because I want to put the credibility on the managers that they are the ones. Hey, we're making this change, or hey, we're doing this fun event, hey, I want to take the entire service department to Topgolf because they've crushed their goals. But I'm not saying, hey, Jason wants to take you. I'm saying, hey, I need you to say it like it's your idea because I want everybody to fall in love with you. And then just say, hey, Jason's going to be there. Because I don't freaking care. I just want to win, right? I don't care how we get there. I tell our team all the time, look, you can work from anywhere in the world as long as we're winning.
Yep. Exactly.
If you can do your thing and make it happen and we're winning, then I don't care if you're in Thailand. Yep. You're doing your job. We can, versus like sales PE, obviously. Like there's certain positions that, I'm talking about. But the moment we start losing, the moment you got to get your butt back in the office. You got to get back
in the office, man. Yeah. It's about being like max efficiency. And like I had to have a conversation of that recently too. Where like, hey, I could take the calls like in the car. I could take it at home. Like that's fine. But how efficient is it going to be? Because I don't want you on calls to like check the box on calls.
Right.
I want you on calls to close some business, close some deals. And so if you are just as efficient in front of a computer screen and your dual monitors that we set up for you as you are like on your phone in the car, then dope. Do it all day. But if it starts to slow down, you get a little bit lax or comfortable because like that's the thing is like it doesn't matter your ability to sell, it's your flow, like your state, right? And so like you have like people don't realize this, like you have to get into state for those calls because I had to learn the hard way. Like there's times where I was like, I'll be at home and like I'll be like watching football or something and like I'll be like laying down like, oh, I gotta call in 5 minutes. Like kind of stretch a little bit. I'm like, okay. And just hop on the call. I'm like listening. I'm like, this is like a bad call. I need to sit up. Like I need to like go clean up, get my clothes on. Like And so it's just all about like your state prior to the call. It's not just being really good at sales. Like you have to be in the moment.
Right. No, 100% agree. And like oftentimes with this podcast, like today I was a little frazzled because I'm all over the place, but usually I'm like pumping up. I'm doing something. I'm listening to my man Rob Bailey and his little his heavy metal. He's my guy. You do have to get ready for him. So this last weekend we just had an RV show in 2 different states, and so that's been all over the place. I was in Oregon one day and then Utah the next, and just all over the place in Pennsylvania the day before that. And we kind of talk about in our sales meetings, like it's a pump up, like it's our Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Like these RV shows are our Super Bowl, and we have them twice a year. But it's game day because you have all these customers. We got 70 units in the show, and you really have to get yourself ready. The people that are hyping themselves up and doing cool things and high fiving and bouncing ideas off each other and being creative and ripping the energy drinks back and just having a good time, those people were successful. It's I'm very aware of or try to be observant of people, and so in our sales meetings I notice the guys that are just like sitting there like whatever, they're not listening, they're on their phone texting. I got the numbers, the guy didn't sell anything. And, you know, we had a guy sell 10 units, 15 units, like the big difference, right? And you know, I really agree with you that you have to get in that state. Like, everything is a state of mind that you have to be in dealing with people, and even in hard conversations. Like, it's the worst thing you can do is kind of just blindside yourself. I mean, sometimes that might make you perform if you're that personality. Most people aren't. Most people have to get ready and prepare. And even with having those hard conversations with friends, like we were talking about earlier, and hey, like, we kind of gotta not split ways, but I'm gonna move on and do my thing. You might want to prepare a little bit. Now, I believe in there's over preparing, because then you psych yourself out, but kind of have a game plan going in there and execute the game plan. That's the most important part. So, you know, I agree with you.
Well, our minds want what's comfortable. So if you have to go have a hard conversation, the more you think about it, the more your brain is going to say, don't do it.
Right.
Because it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Right. Like, it's just, you learn this with bodybuilding. Like, our bodies are made to survive, not look good. Right. So if you start going in a deficit, it's going to like store some fat because it thinks you're starving. Right. And the same thing with like the whole fight or flight. You're going to have a hard conversation. It's like, no, if you have this conversation, they're going to hate you and you're probably going to die. Like, it's about surviving and death. Like, that's it. Right. And so having the hard conversation is like you said, make the game plan and then just go do it. And then in business, it's fire, ready, aim. You'll never have the perfect game plan.
Right.
And you are always going to change your business model. Like, the core of the business will probably be the same, like the idea.
Right.
But the way you do it will probably always change. Because if you don't, people like in 10 years are never going to hear about you because you're going to be a blockbuster and you're going to fall off.
For sure. 100%
so you
agree.
always have to adjust, which makes me think, right? Like, I'm sure not a lot of people get to ask you, because it's kind of like your podcast. Bro, 100 million in sales, like, that ain't easy. No. What would you say has been like the biggest like contributor for you to scale to that number? That's a big number.
It honestly kind of sounds cliche, but our culture, you know, it's a mindset. We always say margin's a mindset. If you think you're going to make money, you are. If you're not, well, you're not going to. And, you know, when you're in your stress zone, we call it a stress zone. When you're in your stress zone, you're losing money. And so if you're always stressed out and everything's bad and things are going on, you're going to lose money. So, you know, with ours, we just set the expectation in our culture, and we just created in my mind, the moment that we bought our first location in 2018, we had a $100 million company. I mean, I walked around like that. Now, I was always, you know, I remember sitting in a class one time back in 2000, and it was October 2018. Don't know why I remember that, but it was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, middle of nowhere. And we went to this class, and I remember a guy standing up there saying he did $100 million. And I just remember looking at him like, what the heck? I always wanted to do that. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, man, if he can do it, I can do it. This dude looks like a bum. But I'm like, man, that's incredible. I cannot imagine doing $100 million. And we went home from that. Me and my CEO, his name's Matt. He's my right-hand guy. He's such a good dude. We went home like, dude, we're going to create this company. We're going to do this. And we have just kind of created that expectation because we've done it through acquisitions. So we owned one location in 2018, one in 19. So we just had one location for 2 years. And then in 2020, the greatest time to ever own an RV dealership, we bought 2 locations. Now those 2 locations did $22 million combined in 2019. In 2020 or 2020, we did 50. And then in 21, we did 65. So we didn't really change the people. We didn't really do much besides we just created a culture and a winning culture, and our expectation went through the roof. Like in finance, you know, their numbers were 3% of sales. I had a $100,000 bet with the old owner that we could get to 7. He didn't believe me. Dude, we're averaging 12.
Dang.
And probably one of the best finance departments in the country right now. And it's just a mindset. Like if you believe you can do it, you can. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And we would go into, because these dealerships are owned usually by people who either started them a million years ago or whatever. We bought them. I think so far we bought them pretty much all from the OG owners. Yeah, we bought every dealership from the OG owner, which is unique. And now that I'm thinking about that, we have. And so they've lived in a box pretty much. And I'm a little bit younger at the RV industry. I've only been in it since 2018 and I haven't grown up in it, but I only know what I know, and I know business. And so I'm that person that's gone into the RV industry saying, well, why are you doing it this way? Well, we've been doing it over the last 20 years. Why?
Yeah.
You know, especially in finance, especially in sales. You know, we go often these these dealerships, and what's your sales process? We don't really have a sales process. Well, that doesn't help the dealership what it's supposed to make, and then it doesn't help the customer get the customer service they're supposed to make, because if there's no paperwork, there's no computer systems, there's nothing going on. How are you supposed to track all of this stuff? And no wonder we have such bad reviews, or you guys have such bad reviews. And so what we've been able to do is just literally change the mindset of the culture of the dealerships. We're so far 8 out of 8, and it's been phenomenal to see these people just flourish by giving them the tools. Like, my number one job as a CEO of the company is to set them up for success. Every single day I have to set my people up for success. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing my job.
Right.
And I believe like every manager and everybody's job is to set everybody up for success as best as we can. Now, I can't magically wave wands and make things appear, but I have to give them the right tools. And us as a group, being a big group and having that big, I guess the money to be able to buy things for people is big, but it's just a mindset. Like when we go in, we have book trainings and management trainings and book reports they have to do. And I mean, we're very methodical about how we do things, because I want to know what type of people we have, and getting those A players, making the roster, right? And I've never gone in and fired everybody, ever, not one time. And I know that's a lot of RV dealership strategies out there. And even any industry acquisition, it's usually we let everybody go. But I believe so much in my heart that I can help change people. We don't let anybody go.
That's super powerful. And it's funny, I had a quick thought when you were saying, like, if you believe you can or can't, right? And there's so many people who are listening, right? They're like, well, I know I can do it, and I'm still struggling. And the only thing I can think is, like, do your behaviors dictate, like, do the actions dictate that as well? Like, if you believe you can, but you aren't doing the things, then no, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Like, I was with, again, my assistant, we were golfing the other day, and he had a call with a potential client, someone who wanted to hire me as a mentor. And we were talking, and he believed in his process. Like, I created this new software. Like, I know this can like really blow up and be a massive thing. I'm like, dope. Like, let's get to work. He's like, well, I just don't really have the funds to do this. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can understand that. But what are you doing? I was like, and then I just gave him just some free advice. I was like, you got like this, and this trade show coming up. You need to be at these. Like, I know you're in New York, but like this one's in Texas, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, you got to be there. He's like, well, I just don't know if like, is it really, do you think it'll be worth it? And I was like, it's a tech summit, and you just created a software.
Right.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, those are the people you need to be in front of.
Right.
And there's like a CRM tool too. And so I was like, bro, like, go collect their data with your own software and then retarget them. And they'll be like, oh, sweet. Like, this stuff actually works.
Right.
How can I use it?
Right.
And I'm like, don't tell me that you think your business is going to be successful and then not going to the trade shows, not going to the networking events. Like, if it's your only the only income that you have, why are you not putting in 18 hours a day on it?
Right.
Like, if you're not where you want to be, why are you taking time off?
Right.
Like, it blows my mind.
It's insane. So I read, when did I read these? A long time ago. I listen to a lot of Grant Cardone. He's a good dude. And I mean, say what you want about him, but
I love Grant.
He gets stuff done.
Yeah.
But I read a book, and he's talking about having a vivid obsession and then taking the massive action to accomplish that obsession, right? There's so many people out there that just have a dream that they want to make it happen. And I'm like, okay, what are you doing to accomplish a dream? Like, make it a reality, right? Stop trying to just have because I love The Secret, and I'm 100% believer in the mindset. 100%. Your mind is so powerful. I believe it can heal you and kill you. I mean, there's stories of people that they froze their wrists with ice thinking they were cutting them, and they died because they thought they were bleeding out. I mean, there's crazy stories you can read about. Your mind is so powerful. But at the end of the day, you can't just sit on the couch and watch The Secret every single day and do nothing.
Yeah.
Right? You have to do something. You have to take that action to get there. So, like, when you talk about how we've been able to scale, like, we've taken the action. We went and done the acquisitions. We've created systems, and we've done stuff. Like, we've done that. And like, it's so easy for me to do that, and it's so easy for me to think about that. But some people are like, well, I don't know. Like, I had this business idea for this. I'm like, well, what have you done to do it? Well, I'm like, okay, then just throw it away, dude. Like, why are you worrying about it every single day? Yeah, give yourself a few weeks, and if you can make it happen, awesome. If you can't, then move on to something else. Because if you're a creator, a true creator, I mean, and like, I don't know about you, but I've had some businesses that I've been like, oh, I should do this, create an LLC, boom, do this, do that. It didn't really work. Okay, moving on from
Scratch it.
Yeah. You know, I am a certified home inspector.
time.
No one knows that, but I am a certified home inspector. Did I inspect one house? No, because I got too busy. But I still have the LLC.
Yep.
One day I'm like, man, I'm going to still have a Mountainside Home Inspection. Shout out. I feel like I'm still going to have this home inspection company. But my brother and I one day woke up. We're like, man, we should do home inspection. You make $300 a pop. Boom, let's do it. But it didn't really end up working out. We move on. We didn't just sit there and be like, hey, I have this home inspecting business that I've never done anything with, and I feel like I should be a millionaire right now.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Bro,
you have to take that massive action and make a game plan to do it. And if you can, find a mentor. Yep. Like your business strategy, like a coach. Hey, I need you to help do this, because my personality and the way I think is I'm not just going to waste my time and spin my wheels because I'm trying to have some pride.
Or pride is the killer.
Dude, I'm the first person to be like, if I'm not going to Target or Walmart, whatever. I sometimes do shop at Walmart. If I'm going there to Target, say I'm gonna know the general idea of something where something's at. Dude, I'm the first. I go straight to the plate. Where's this at?
Yeah,
it's over there. Okay, aisle 3, whatever. Okay, boom. I'm straight
out.
there, in and out. Dude, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I know it's around here somewhere.
Yeah.
I just don't have time to do that, and I have no pride. And it's weird to me. I love talking to people, so I'm like, hey man, how's your day going? What's going on? You want to come with me to walk with me? And it just drives me nuts when people are like, oh, I'm not gonna ask why. I don't need any help. Why?
Dude,
I'm sure there's someone out there that has done a software. Well, let's call them. I'm sure they went to every trade show, right? Like RV, let's call people in there. Like there's just so much. And people are really pretty willing to help.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't. Like, it's just, I don't know. I could talk about that all day.
The true successful people are willing to help.
Yeah.
The ones who like think they are, or they're on their way.
Right.
I've noticed that they want to keep things close to the chest. They want to charge. But like the people who have like been there, they're like, here's what you got to do.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter. Like A, you'll never compete with me, and B, I give you this information. 99% of the people are going to do nothing with it.
Right.
So like, why are we just going to waste my time? Like, just go do this, this, and this, and like, you'll be good.
So one thing I want to ask you, which we've almost an hour. We've been jamming on this, but one thing I want to ask you is, so what are your top 3 things being an entrepreneur that you've learned that, you've gone through all these things. What are the top 3 things, like your go-to 3 things when you're starting a business or you're coaching anybody? People,
process, product. Got to get the right people around you. Master your process. Like for me, I have like my lead generator. I use Nouri, Nouri, as my my CRM tool, and then that's my process. Then I have a sales team, right? So we run ads, it goes into the system, and then it gets closed. Like it's all turnkey. I could literally write down my entire business on a sticky note, give it to somebody, and I could walk away and sell that. I could sell that sticky note for 10 mil, like no problem. And then your product, is it solving a solution? Oh, and then is it either solving a solution or is it bring value to somebody's life, right? And if you are selling something, never say this is better, say this is different.
Right.
Those are like the biggest keys of everything. Is your people, process, product, and never offer something better, offer something different.
I love that, man. That's really good advice. I think when you're talking a lot about competition, there's no reason to say, oh, it's better. Because then you start having those people like, oh, well, prove it.
Yeah, it's all pride. Yeah. And they're like, well, and here's the thing, right? Is like, hey, here's this, and you hated it. This is better.
Right.
Well, anything can be better because I hated that. I don't really want to try it. Hey, here's this. I have something totally different. If you like A, B, and C, you're going to love this.
Right.
I'm down to try it. It's different.
Because even in, like, you can say construction company, well, digging a hole is digging a hole. But I'm sorry to say that everybody who owns a construction company, but the track code digs the same way your track code does, this guy's track code does. But you can do it different on the way of maybe customer service, communication, branding, how you do things. I mean, there's because construction's a little bit of a cutthroat industry, and it's not the most advanced industry. It's it's a bunch of, I'm not gonna say it's redneck, because the RV industry is way more redneck than that.
Yeah, it's true.
But like, so say the RV industry, like anybody can sell an RV. It's not that hard. We all carry the same brands, just sell the RV, but it's how you do things on the back end that makes it different. Now, I'm not going to say I'm better than everybody else, because I don't know how to prove that and quantify that, but I'll say I'm different, and I do have probably the highest rated, I do have the highest rated dealerships in the state of Utah. And, the customer service is just very different. So I 100% agree with you, because, hey, we're better than the other guys. What makes you better? Well, I don't know. We all sell them. We all service them. But we can say that our communication might be better, but it's different. We communicate via text instead of a phone call and different things like that. So I like that advice. Just what's better, or what's different. And not what's better. That's really good advice. Actually, I'm going to definitely use that. The last thing I want to ask you, man, when we wrap this up is, this has been great, by the way. I really enjoyed this. And
awesome.
You're freaking a genius. And I've literally thoroughly enjoyed this. I want to ask you, what does success mean to you? How do you define success?
Peace, man.
Yeah?
Peace. So for me, I thought it was numbers. And I'm sure you could resonate. Your first milli didn't feel that great.
Right.
It was exciting, but it wasn't like, okay, like I'm here, right?
It wasn't everything I ever dreamed of, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you
thought
all my wildest dreams are going to come true. And it's like, well.
I know. And it's like,
where are my dreams at?
Bro, I'm telling you, like, basically where things start to change is like probably like right around like 200 grand. And like literally from 200 to $1 million, like it all feels the same.
Right.
Like you're making a little bit more than what you need and you're just investing. And you have more opportunities and stuff. So for me, it was fulfillment. And so now when I find true success, I set out a goal and I accomplished it. And I did it with urgency. So the 12-week year was the book that changed my life. And just get super urgent. Instead of 12-month goals, you need 12-week goals and just go get it done.
Love it.
And actually Keaton Hoskins, the muscle, he sat me down. We talked about my 2-year goal and he's like, go get it done in a year. And I did it in 8 months.
That's awesome.
And so it was like being able to do stuff like that, bro, is like finding peace, like being able to wake up and not feel like an elephant sitting on your chest, being able to go to bed and fall asleep, like having good relationships, taking time out of my day to come meet with you and do this. Like that's peace. And I found that successful.
No, I love that. That's huge. And I'm agree with you. Like money's not everything. It's funny. I was actually thinking of a Keaton story. Just popped in my head. Good buddy of mine. We're down in Puerto Vallarta, on vacation for, his wife's birthday. And we got to talking and I was like, Keaton, what do you want? What's your goals? And he said, man, I just want to be happy. I used to want all of these things. I used to want this and used to want that. And I just want a happy life and not to be stressed. And I was like, okay. He's like, Tony Robbins put it this way. I guess he'll probably correct me if I'm wrong, but he was talking to Tony Robbins and Tony was like, Keaton, like you need to chase quality of life and you need to chase happiness. If you think you're chasing money, that's not where it's going to come from. Look, if I go buy a $10 million house, you can buy a $10 million house. The difference is Tony's paying cash for it. You're financing it. I'm buying a jet, I'm paying cash. You're chartering. I'm buying a Lambo. Maybe you might buy cash. I don't know. Do we have the same pretty much lifestyle? Yeah. Stop trying to kill yourself to get somewhere. Make sure you have the quality of life. I guess, and it kind of put it in perspective of me, like, man, like I'm chasing something so hard and I'm blowing past all these people and I'm forgetting what really makes me happy. And I believe, my version of success is, looking yourself in the mirror and just being truly happy, whatever a dollar amount that is. Now, I do like money, and I'm with most people of it's right up there with oxygen. You need it to survive, but I think I'm over trying to kill myself for it and trying to stretch myself so thin that I ruin everything that I have, and I'm trying to work smarter and not harder. So I love what you said is it's peace, man. No one's ever said that on the show is peace, like true peace. And what is true peace? Like there's so many different versions of peace too. We can go on and on about that, but that's powerful, man. Is there you have like Eric McNeil, success is peace. I love it, dude.
Yes, sir.
But hey, man, I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
It means a lot. I know you're a super busy guy. It means a lot to me. We've only known each other, just for a little bit, but I feel like we've had a good connection, and really looking forward to have today. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.